The Israeli Prime Minister criticizes the implementation of the Iran nuclear deal as the Iranian president claims that everyone is in support but Israel. Sources in the Syrian government claim that Islamic State militants killed at least 300 people in eastern Syria in wide-scale attacks on government-held areas. And Republican presidential candidates make a big play for Tea Party support only a few weeks ahead of the early primary states. Hello, you're watching I-24 News. I'm David Matlin. Well, international sanctions on Iran have been lifted after it was confirmed that it had complied with a deal designed to prevent it from developing nuclear weapons. According to a statement from Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's office, quote, even after signing the nuclear deal, Iran has not relinquished its ambition to obtain nuclear weapons, close quote. As Iranian President Rouhani claims that everyone supports the deal but Israel. Danny Swibel has more.
The UN nuclear watchdog, the International Atomic Energy Agency, announced Iran was in full compliance with the July deal negotiated between 6 world powers and Iran over the restriction of its nuclear program. Sanctions against Tehran, described as crippling, were in turn lifted. EU Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini said in a statement that was also read in Farsi by Iran Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif that the historic deal had gone into full force.
Today we have achieved implementation day of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Ever since adoption day, we worked hard and showed mutual commitment and collective will to finally bring the JCPOA to implementation.
Its proper implementation will be a key contribution to improved regional and international peace, stability, and security. This achievement clearly demonstrates that with political will, perseverance, and through multilateral diplomacy, we can solve the most difficult issues and find practical solutions that are effectively implemented.
Within minutes, the United States formally lifted banking, steel, shipping, and other sanctions on Iran, a major oil producer which has been virtually shut out of international markets for the past 5 years. Tens of billions of dollars worth of Iranian assets will now be unfrozen, and global companies that have been barred from doing business there will be able to exploit a market hungry for everything from automobiles to airplane parts.
Iran has undertaken significant steps that many, and I do mean many, people doubted would ever come to pass. And that should be recognized, even though the full measure of this achievement can only be realized by assuring continued full compliance in the coming years.
The end of sanctions means more money and prestige for Shiite Muslim Iran as it becomes deeply embroiled in the sectarian conflicts of the Middle East, notably in the Syrian civil war where its allies are facing Sunni Muslim rebels. In turn, the deal has been viewed with deep suspicion by U.S. Republicans, as well as various American allies in the Middle East, including Israel and Saudi Arabia. In a dramatic move scheduled to coincide with the scrapping of the sanctions, Tehran also announced the release of 5 Americans, including Washington Post reporter Jason Rezaian, as part of a prisoner swap with the U.S.
Well, the walls and doors of the Dormition Abbey on Mount Zion in Jerusalem were found defaced with anti-Christian graffiti today. One of them reads, "Death to Christians, enemies of Israel." The police have opened an investigation. The Dormition Abbey commented that the, quote, inscriptions are not only against Jesus, the Messiah, but also a call to slaughter the Christians and send them to hell. How long will these acts of vandalism continue, close quote. According to a report by I-24 News diplomatic correspondent Tal Shalev, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu made 2 changes to a controversial NGO transparency bill to remove the demand for name tags for NGO activists visiting the parliament and to demand a report of every dollar. In the weekly cabinet meeting, Netanyahu defended the bill, saying, quote, "I do not understand how the transparency demand is anti-democratic. We want to know who funds NGOs. This is the right thing in a democracy," close quote. The initial draft of the bill only demanded transparency from NGOs with 50% of their funding from foreign governments. And according to Israeli newspaper Yediot Ahronot, a diplomatic storm is brewing between Israel and El Salvador, with the Latin American country now considering moving its diplomatic presence from Tel Aviv to Ramallah, according to these media reports. Israel named the El Salvador embassy as one of 5 missions which will close due to foreign ministry budget cuts. El Salvador was said to have told Israel that it's greeted the decision with shock, disappointment, and total surprise, particularly as a high-ranking foreign ministry official only arrived in Israel in November to serve as ambassador. That Islamic State militants on Saturday killed hundreds of people in Syria and abducted hundreds more in wide-scale attacks on government-held areas, opposition activists said. According to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights and sources in the Syrian government, over 300 people were killed, at least 80 of them soldiers.
My leg was hit by tiny shrapnel, but there was neither medicine nor first aid items. They had to cut off my whole leg to prevent necrosis.
This baby is 2 months old. Her mother cannot breastfeed her due to a lack of food. At 2 months old, she weighs only 1 kilogram. She should weigh at least 5 kilograms at her age.
And earlier we spoke with Middle East analyst for Israel Public Radio, Eran Zinger, about the latest slaughter in Syria.
This is indeed a surprising turnout in whatever it's concerning the ISIS efforts to gain control in the eastern part of Syria. We are talking about the Deir Azor district in a town or a village called Boughailia. According to sources that are connected to the government of Syria, more than 300 people have been murdered by ISIS, by an ISIS group that entered the village of Boughailia in the last 24 hours. They're talking about small children, babies, women, old people that were slaughtered, according to the same sources. They were slaughtered by the ISIS members. A few hours after the Syrian army has managed to reach the village and to fight the ISIS fighters and to make them get out of the village of Boughailia to other villages.
And Taiwan's independence-leading opposition leader, Tsai Ing-wen, won a convincing victory in presidential elections Saturday and pledged to maintain peace with China. The I-24 News Desk has more.
Taiwan elected independence-leaning opposition leader Tsai Ing-wen as its first woman president, who could usher in a new round of uncertainty with China, the massive neighbor that claims a self-ruled island as its sacred territory.
Sides have a responsibility to do their utmost to find mutually acceptable ways to interact with respect and reciprocity and ensure no provocation and no surprises. The outcome of today's elections represents the will of the Taiwanese people. The Republic of China, as a democratic country, is the root of 23 million Taiwanese people. Our democracy, national identity, and international space must be fully respected, and any suppression would undermine the stability of cross-strait relations.
Some analysts say maintenance of the status quo between Taiwan and China would benefit both countries.
Many of Tsai Ing-wen's reforms could not be realized without stable cross-strait relations. She will think about the strategy, like she said, of how to maintain the status quo and peace and stability.
Many Beijing residents fear Tsai Ing-wen's victory in Taiwan's national elections will have a negative impact on cross-strait relations.
Her view is that there are two Chinas. Doesn't correspond at all with the opinions of the mainland leadership. It's very different. She belongs to a different camp. But I don't see this in a good light at all, because I think all of us belong to one country. I think we should remember this.
Mainland officials said the Chinese mainland will continue to uphold the 1992 consensus reached with Taiwan and strongly opposes Taiwan's independence.
Well, Republican presidential candidates are making a big play for Tea Party support just ahead of the key primary states. The Tea Party first helped propel the Republicans to power in Congress in 2010. Former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee, Texas Senator Ted Cruz, and Donald Trump spoke to the South Carolina Tea Party Coalition Convention Saturday in Myrtle Beach.
I really like Donald Trump because he's really very clear on the issues, and he goes a little bit deeper than some of the other candidates in following through on what it's going to take to actually problem solve with the economy, homeland security, jobs, just really what's out of line with government being a little bit too intrusive. So I like him a lot that way.
Frankly, I think he has America's best interest because he doesn't have any strings attached. He's not working for anybody directly. He doesn't go to his donors. He goes directly to the American people, and I really like that. I find that attractive about him.
That's all for the top stories. You're watching I-24 News.